Hello everybody and welcome back to Let's Play Aurora 4X C# 2.1. I'm going to get my timer started, and so I read up on the wiki to, as I mentioned, I was going to go ahead and check out and double check when it came to designing the missiles, and yes, as it turns out, designing or putting eCCM on the missile itself is basically just for helping you to, have it actually hit its target. As far as we have observed, our missiles haven't generally had problems hitting their target. However, if I do not want to take the penalty of shooting at a target that has ECM, we are going to have to go and get an eCCM onto our strike fighters. However, we have a problem with that. Our current eCCM that we can put on there is 150 tons if we wanted to go with the absolute best of the best. Or we can slap a not necessarily the best of the best, but it is it is significantly smaller. It is literally a third of the size in the form of the compact eCCM2. Now, of course, we do have that tech now for the small craft eCCM, but it is of course only version 1.0. So it's not quite as good. What is the enemy running again? They are running just level 1, according to what we have for the Tekkas. And that is apparently still true for the AX. So I think it is a reasonably safe bet that we could probably use that and it would be okay. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and, I think, slightly modify plans a little bit when it comes to researching stuff. Those 70-centimeter cannonades, they're not important. They'd be nice to have, sure, but they're not important. So let's go ahead and have Kawashima start research on the small craft eCCM1. We'll add the one extra spare lab onto our magazine. And so yes, I designed the missile by basically just stripping off the eCCM off the missile. So it is ludicrously fast, relatively speaking. Minerals exhausted on an asteroid somewhere. That's fine with me. Okay, there we go. The magazine has been designed. Let's go ahead and get the missiles themselves researched. It is now the Benavides Kinetics AIM-43. And sure, Aurora can research that. That'll be fine. It's not going to take that long anyway. A week, maybe 2 at most. Okay, there's the small craft eCCM one. Now, of course, I cannot research the next level of small craft eCCM because I need to research compact eCCM3 first, which we can go ahead and do. We got time. So let's go ahead and do that. That will be done sometime in June. Okay, that's not quite as good as I would like, obviously, but I'll take it. I'll live. I'll survive. Also go ahead and get the research done on the missile itself. There we go. Now, I don't really care too much about getting small craft ECM for the simple reason that I don't have a real use for it, all things considered. So, yeah, we're not going to bother with that. One thing I think I am going to do with these spare labs, because some of the tech is starting to take a little too long for my likings, is we're going to go ahead and have Zhang Kang here with his 27 labs and a 40% bonus to construction and production. Start researching the next level of research rate, and I'm going to assign any new labs that get built to automatically go to him. One thing I forgot to do, I meant to do this once we finish researching the missile, is to actually pull it up so we can sort of take a look at it. So, here we go. Let's go ahead and switch to that so it's size instead of tonnage. So speed of 81,000 kilometers a second. It has a range of 3.26 million kilometers. A warhead strength of 8, same as our current ones. And maneuver of 10 because we don't really give a shit about that if we're being completely honest. Active radar of 0.35 million kilometers. 8 radiation damage, and it costs 10.66. So, that's going to be a fun thing to build. But let's go ahead and get some of those queued up because we're going to want them. So let's go ahead and just say queue up 600 and, well... No, go ahead and queue up 700 for me. The reason for 700 is that I'm going to need 601 to load up the magazine on the Akagi when the Akagi does get the rebuild to occur. And then that's going to need to be loaded up again to actually fill up, because what's going to happen is it's going to do the initial load up, and then all of the fighters are going to say, hey, the missiles I need are here. And they're going to go ahead and try to, rearm to be equipped with the missiles, and then the Akagi is now not going to be actually sitting at its max capacity for the magazine. Now, admittedly, the reality is, for the engagements that we're doing right now, the Akagi is probably unlikely to actually launch more than a single strike, maybe 2, push comes to shove. But as a general rule, I don't think the Akagi is particularly likely to actually, launch more than a single strike or 2. Again, with our current engagements. And of course, if we're being completely honest, our current engagements, we're not even going to be launching the strike fighters. It is significantly more expensive to fire a missile at a target than it is to fire whatever it is we're shooting with the railguns, because they literally have no ammo necessary. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and get the missiles at least built so that we have them when we do finally actually start using the fighters. Also, for being completely honest, I probably could have put compact eCCM because I think the strike fighters right now have like 3 days worth of fuel. Do they need 3 days worth of fuel? For being honest, not really. Like, what are they going to do with 3 days worth of fuel? They don't loiter. And even if they did loiter, you're not using much fuel if you're just sitting still. Or if you're only needing to make slight adjustments to keep the target inside of your active radar. So, if we're being completely honest, they really don't need that much fuel, and I could probably fit a compact eCCM on there and just take away 50 tons worth of fuel. You know what? I'm curious now to see what that would look like, so let's go and do that. I'm going to make a copy of this design, put an eCCM2 on there, and that means taking away 5 units of small fuel storage. So that still gives you 45 days, or 45 hours, not 45 days, 45 hours of fuel at full power. That is just under 2 days worth. And it does allow you to have an eCCM2. Now, if I wanted to use just eCCM1, that halves the size further from 50 to 25. So just to do another test, just to see what that looks like exactly, that would result in 61 hours at full power. And there really isn't a need for you to do full power. One thing, however, that I do want to consider, and I'm going to pause, I think, to, do the math on this, because I'm not particularly great at doing that off the top of my head. But so this is a cloak reduction of 90% on a 7100 active sensor. What size is that actually, as far as our sensors are concerned? Because what I'm considering as a potential idea, because the Akagi does not need a year's worth of fuel, is potentially designing like a mid-range active sensor that would be able to easily detect a target with a 90% cloak reduction at a significantly longer distance compared to what our current resolution 1 active sensors are capable of. So I'm going to pause for a second. I'm going to do the math to figure out exactly how small that ship would be in this case. So 1 second. Okay, so if my math is correct, 90% of that would roughly put us at about 710-ish ton object. I can't actually, get this maximum range versus yada yada ton object to be 710 exactly. I can get 700. And that should cover it, because unless I'm completely misremembering, the way this works is this is maximum range versus a target of at least 700 tons. So 710 tons would qualify as within at least 700. And so this would have a little over twice the range of our resolution 1 sensors. And they don't weigh much, it's only an extra 50 tons. I can easily find an extra 50 tons on the Akagi by just stripping out like an extra normal size fuel storage. And it's not like it's going to be missing that fuel. So I think we're going to do this. I legitimately think we are, because it's a little annoying, not being able to detect the enemy escorts, for lack of a better way to describe it, because that's really what they are, until they're about 11 million kilometers away from us. I mean, 11 million kilometers is a ton of range. The enemy's not going to be able to hit us with their guns, the rail guns that they have on there, because they don't have the range. And the enemies, the raiders at least, don't seem to be using missiles as far as we can tell. They've never fired missiles at us, and the one that we captured did not have missiles on it. So as far as we can tell, they're not using missiles. So while in this scenario, it doesn't really make a significant difference, I do think having this mid-range active sensor might actually be particularly useful. So we are going to do that. Now, just to make sure I'm getting this correct for my naming convention. And it is the range followed by the resolution. So in this case, it would be the ANSPY 2614. And we're going to go with Polo Warning and Control. That's a terrible name for a company. Ishiyama Electronics Industries, sure. And just go ahead and create that. We're not going to prototype it, because in this case, prototyping it does not make any difference as far as we are concerned. When will I have labs available? June, okay. Next time I have labs available, they're going to research that. And we're going to be putting that, I think, on just the carriers. Well, yeah, we're going to put it on just the carriers. The cruisers, while it might be helpful, God, it would be helpful for the quick reaction forces. Because I'm not going to give the quick reaction forces a carrier. They don't need a carrier. Carriers are either going to be part of an actual fleet, or they're going to be on escort duties with a freighter. Okay. We'll theory craft it when it comes to whether or not to actually put these on the cruisers once we're done. They're definitely not going on the destroyers. The destroyers don't need them, but it could be helpful to put it on the cruisers as well, just because it would benefit the quick reaction forces. Because they are also needing to deal with this. And that did not unlock small. Yes, because it's like, what, 3 techs behind or something like that? I think that's correct, yes. So we're not going to get small craft eCCM 2, I think, until I can research. Well, no, that was compact eCCM 3. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get that until I can research compact eCCM 4, maybe? I don't know. There's multiple levels of that, I do know that. But I don't know exactly where the unlocks are. I'll admit that was the first time I'd ever seen it, because I don't generally pay too much attention to that. And I haven't really had games that have run particularly long, generally speaking. Okay, so again, we need to figure out, do I want to go with the compact, or do I really want to use the small craft? Because that is the question. The compact eCCM 3 would more than negate. Although, theoretically, small craft eCCM 1 should negate it. Because as far as we know, they're just using ECM 1. So eCCM 1 would completely negate ECM 1. If they had ECM 2, it would have the penalty we take of trying to fire on a ship that has ECM 2 by having eCCM 1. So in this scenario, I think we're going to go with the small craft one, because it is sufficient for our needs. let's go ahead and delete these other ones. Also, let's go into here so you guys have the correct missiles selected. And I also need to tell you to load up on these. Okay, so you will have 150. If I recall correctly, I think my math was right on that. Yes, that would be effectively 15 loadouts. Or, excuse me, 15 sorties for these. Now the question is, do I do it? So, in your case, I think you would be fine with just sticking with the resolution 1. Do I want to stick one of these on here? Because they're not going to be necessary if I'm sticking the new active sensors, you know, the mid-range active sensors that we're designing onto the Akagi. An early warning craft like this is not going to be actually necessary. It might have been helpful if I were not going to do this, because then I could keep the Akagi back, detecting just the troop transport, which doesn't have the cloak reduction. I could then launch this to close the distance and gain an active lock on the actual escorts, then launch the strike fighters from the Akagi. Well, from the carrier. In this case, specifically the Akagi, because that's our only carrier right now. Well, actually, it's not. It's our only carrier. We do technically have the escort carrier, which I think is still running around with the old F1 fighters, because we just never bothered having it actually refit. Well, not refit, but, you know, make the switch. But whatever, that doesn't really matter too much to me. We'll live. Let's go ahead and get the new active sensors onto the Akagi, get those researched. We can sort out the exact, you know, fighter craft organization of the Akagi later, but I think with this sensor we are not going to need to do that. You know, I said it was 50 tons. That's not strictly true. It does require 2 extra crew, which is requiring an additional set of crew quarters or larger crew quarters, and as a result, you know, it's technically 56 tons. But that doesn't really matter. Now, what are we... So we were using ECCM. Okay, yeah, we haven't researched compact ECM. Sense level 1, so that's fine. So let's go ahead and take off one of these. And then remove the tiny, and that still keeps you at 43,000 tons. I think we can get the Akagi to go ahead and do the upgrade. I did forget to go ahead and have this thing slap on itself the, God, what is it called? The electronic hardening. It doesn't really matter. This is useful if the enemy is using microwaves. Where are they? High power microwaves. Because these can knock electronics offline. But the enemy's not using those. I just kind of did it for some of these just because we could, basically. There's really no reason to do it. So let's go ahead and rename this class. It is now going to be the Akagi 2140. Because that is when it is going to be considered feature complete as far as I'm concerned. Now, as for the cruisers, those are still missing getting the new power plants, because we are still trying to research the solid core antimatter power plant. And until that is researched, I can't actually put the new power plants on. But that's fine. You guys are going to get the new active sensors as well. Now the question is, how do I go about getting you back under, well, not under, but back to 23,000? And I think the answer to that is going to be the same as it was in the case of the Akagi, is I'm just going to take fuel off, because that's about the only thing I can actually take off. Unless I wanted to remove your thermal sensors, which I could do. The destroyers have thermal, right? Yes, the thermals do have, the destroyers do have passives. The cruiser could technically make do without having its own passives, because it is always going to be paired with something that does have passives. Just like the Akagi does not technically have, well, I say technically, does not have, period, passive sensors. It just has the actives. Because it's always going to be paired with something that does have passives. And those could just be the destroyers. That would be perfectly acceptable. Yeah, I think we can do that. I think we would be fine just stripping off the passive sensors on the cruisers and relying on the passives from the destroyers to be able to detect with those. Not that we detect much anyway when it comes to passives. That's something that we should note. We are not really detecting anything with our passives for the most part when it comes to the ships themselves. We're generally relying on the actives or passives from the planets. So let's go ahead, and that frees up an extra 50-ish. Not exactly. To give you a little bit extra fuel to get you to 282 days, because as it stands right now, the cruisers are the thing that do not have at least a year's worth of fuel. Does anything need a year's worth of fuel? Again, the answer is no. Do I like it? Yes, because it's a nice, relatively evenish number. The reality is none of this stuff can survive out in the wild for that long. It just can't. Now, one thing I am going to do is I think I'm going to swap some of these maintenance storage bays for actual engineering spaces. To get your IFR down. And besides, that does actually give you, maintenance life. Not quite as much as storage space does. How far can I push you using just this? I can push you to about a little over a year and a half, and a 7.9 IFR. And maintenance storage, that leaves me with about 50-ish tons to work with. And that gets you to 2 years of maintenance life with an IFR of 7.9. That should allow you to be able to operate for longer periods of time without any issues. Let's also get something similar going on with you. Now, I could make you a bit larger. I could get you to 30, which I might do. You don't really need to be this fast, because anything you'd be escorting is not that fast. Yeah, anything you'd be escorting is like 3,200 at best. At least as things stand right this second. But it doesn't hurt for you to be a little bit faster, so you can potentially react on your own. Because I could always detach you and just have you basically charge at the enemy. It's an option. It's a terrible option, but it is an option. And it would allow you to also be able to run away. Because the current one is technically a little bit too slow to be able to actually run, should I ever need to have you run away. You do need the fuel because you hang out with the freighters and they're kind of slow. So if I end up putting you out on any longer distance runs, yeah, you kind of need to have that fuel. Beyond that, though, you don't really need anything else. Also, the Akagi technically would benefit from a primary flight control now. Because this will help with reload, or excuse me, with rearm and refuel times. So we're going to go with that. That does mean I need to take some extra fuel off again. About 200 units worth. So we're just going to remove a large fuel tank. And there we go. Again, you don't have a year, but that's fine. It's more than sufficient for your actual needs. Again, still need to figure out exactly what to do with the Africa. Because the Akagi is managing to eke out to stay in service for a little while longer. Let's go ahead and get you refitted, or excuse me, retooled to go ahead and be able to work with the Akagi. So that'll be done July 15th, so not too long. You are also waiting for something, aren't you? No, you're not waiting for anything. You are perfectly fine as you are. So we're going to go ahead and rename you as well. And you're going to be Abdil 2140. Let's also get that one retooled. Speaking of that, that also means you are waiting for your power plant. So our stuff's not going to quite be on the same schedule. But that's okay. We'll survive. Don't need the extra fuel production. Let's see, what do we go for? Do we go ahead and continue getting a little bit of research done into that 70 centimeter cannonade? Maybe. Because we don't really have anything else worth researching. Unless I wanted to go ahead and get compact ECM2. Well, you know what, it doesn't hurt, so yeah, we're going to go for that. And any new labs that get built will get assigned to that. Okay, those have completed. Let's go ahead and get the Akagi refitted. Use any components that exist and you will have that done. September of this year. Wonderful. The Abdil. You have quite a few you need to refit. I should probably consider adding an extra slipway. Particularly for the destroyer. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. But for now, we're going to let the Abdil do its. But you're going to add a slipway over here. And I think I can have you add a slipway actually anyway. Because I don't think that actually interferes with the existing slipways. Also, are the abdils not properly set up to have TRS at the end? No, they are. It's just some of these I apparently yes, if I recall correctly, some of these were built before I realized that they didn't have TRS set to, show up. And I thought I renamed all of them, but apparently I didn't. Whoops. I really thought I did rename them all, but apparently I didn't. I forgot to do it for Quick Reaction Force 2. And those actually technically haven't updated, so... It's how you delete those tasks just to make sure that when the game spits them back out, that they have the correct names. Oh, I also didn't pay attention. When were those refits supposed to finish again? September, okay. Looks like they're all around September, sometime in September. Looks like right now we're going to have to rely on Quick Reaction Force 2 if it comes to needing to send out to deal with anything. Because, obviously, Carrier Strike Group 1 can't go while it's being refitted. Wonderful. The missile's finished. And of course, Quick Reaction Force 1 can't go either when some of its ships are being refit, unless I split them off. In which case, not nearly as strong of a fleet, so no thanks. Because one of the things we've obviously observed is that the enemies will run away because they detect our ships and they say, oh god, I'm not fighting that. But if I have to send out like just a cruiser, the enemy will probably say, yeah, no, I'm going to charge that. Wonderful. Let's finish the refits on the Abdil. Well, not finish, but, continue. At least. And Carrier Strike Group 1 is going to go to Earth, and I actually need to select the Akagi and correct you. And say, copy from class. I also need to split off one of these guys. See, so it's supposed to be 12-12 now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to... Oops, that gets you to 13, actually. So 12-12, and then you guys are going to detach. Now, is there any option for me to tell you to, like, remove yourself from... Does not look like it. Okay, I'm going to tell you guys just follow Earth. That way you hopefully stay in orbit. Okay, you guys already split off. Actually, I'm going to put you under the reserves. And this is going to have to be renamed because it's no longer going to be the actual name that we're using. But I can deal with that later. And it is... I closed this without double checking. It is, yes, 10. Okay. So fighters, 10 of these. We're just going to build the 10 for now because I don't need any more. Yeah, carrier reserves is fine. And those will finish in October. First one has been built. 2 more get built. Another 2. Just 1 this time. 2 more, and then now the last 2 should get built. Wonderful. Now this is no longer this. And I'll come up with a name for you guys later. Detach. Fleet. Carrier Strike Group 1. Land and join specified squadron. Wonderful. Game seems to have worked this correctly. Didn't decide to be a pain like it has sometimes in the past. Looks like you guys already got the missiles. Did you automatically equip them after they got built? I think you might have. I legitimately think it might have done that. Which I'm fine with. If the game wants to do that, be my guest. It does not hurt me in the slightest. Just to make sure that you are fully loaded on ordnance. Wonderful. And you guys are fine? You are. Wonderful. We will get to those guys. Yep, see, that's the problem I had. Who was it that is apparently exceeding their flight, their deployment time? FA1, how? How? Seriously, how? How did it exceed its flight time? Oh, 10 did. Oh. I kind of forgot to assign you, I think. I think that was the yes, I think that was the problem. Fleet. Carrier Strike Group 1. Join specified squadron. That one. And this is causing some problems because for some reason you're not in orbit. Don't know why. Ah, I see the problem. I still have one of these on there. Yes, that would explain it perfectly. That should do it now. Yes, although now, of course, you are needing to head back to Earth. And you don't have a ride to take you there, so you're going to have to figure it out yourself. But you're fast enough, you should be able to do it without any issues. Okay, there we go. That should all now be sorted out. I forgot that I needed to take one of the observation craft off. So that one, your morale's in the... Yeah, your morale's kind of crap because of that. Apparently you really do not enjoy being left out in space, all by yourself. But don't worry, you'll be fine now. There we go, some of the refits finished for the Abdils. This, I believe, should be the last group for this time. Yep, it's just the one, and that'll finish in January. Still waiting on this thing, finishing September of next year. That's fine. The cruisers and the normal destroyers will be getting their refits done, it looks like. In 2141, 2142-ish. Well, it would have to be 2142, I think, because I have to actually, research the new power plant as well, actually. So, yeah. It'll probably be 2142. Something is triggering the game to go with slower increments there. Okay, slipways got added. Wonderful. That'll help us in the future when it comes to doing refits. Those will occur just that tiny bit faster. Speaking of, I should probably actually start considering handling the refits of our civilian craft. Also may want to consider setting up a refit for the Albion, because it now has the outdated armor. Not that that really matters, but it is something to consider. We're probably not going to bother with setting up refits on the assault shuttles yet, because I don't think they really benefit from it. Beyond maybe being able to make them a tiny bit smaller. Which, if I can... Game, how much weight is saved if I were to do this, just out of curiosity? 8 tons each. Okay, so at 8 tons each across 40 various, things, would that... I don't think that would enable an extra, would it? No, I do not believe that that is correct. I believe I would still only be able to fit 40. Unless my math is way off. I believe I would still only be able to have 40. I believe. Because this is a hangar space of 20,000 tons. 492. I mean, it doesn't really matter because we're not doing it. Yeah, no, I would still be limited to 40. That's what I thought. It would just mean that I'd have some extra space between the assault shuttles. It makes zero difference to do that, so yeah, we're not updating the assault shuttles right now. They might get a refit in the future once, missile, or what, excuse me, not missiles, engine tech improves further. Because like I said, well, actually, I think they're slower than our fighters. So for me, 12,000-ish kilometers a second, I think, is roughly the highest we will go when it comes to our fighters and the like. Well, I say that, this thing is like 13,000. But yeah, somewhere in that 12 to 13,000 kilometers a second, I think, is the highest we're going to go. The assault shuttles technically need a bit extra oomph to get going. Granted, they are 100 tons heavier, so it's not too surprising that they're about 2,000 kilometers a second slower. So if I could, just with fuel efficiency, cut down on the engine, or well, on the amount of fuel they need to carry, that might be able to get them down, and thus get the speed up. But honestly, I think the assault shutters are generally going to be sitting at 500, because I don't think it's particularly practical unless I give them their own unique engine. And I do not have an interest in having them have a unique engine. So I think what's going to happen is that they are going to stay using the normal fighter engines, and they just kind of have to live with the benefits and negatives of that when it comes to doing refits for them. Speaking of doing refits, I believe you can actually refit fighters. I've never really bothered with it, but I believe it is actually possible, I think. No, I might be incorrect on that. Okay. For some reason, I thought it might be possible. Because obviously you can scrap them. They do show up in this list. But it looks like it is not actually possible to refit a fighter, which, I guess is fine. They're fast enough to build, so it's not too big of an issue. Okay, but now you guys should... We turn on actives here, yes. So we now have actives that go out about 11 million kilometers, actives that go out about 26 and some change, and then actives that go out to 52 and some change. Because I don't think it's actually straight 52. I think it's a little bit, right? I hate you, game. Technically, it's not actually 52. It's a little bit under. It's 51 and some change, if we want it to be accurate. We are going to go ahead and obsolete the 2125 version of the Akagi, because we are never building that again. And so, yeah, there we go. We now have that. That will be beneficial should the raiders decide to pop up again. I don't think it's particularly likely that they will right now, because it's been surprisingly quiet at this part. I am shocked that we haven't run into them at all. Though they were probably causing some trouble somewhere, and that is why we were getting the slowdowns a couple of times. But again, we have not actually had them realistically, or, actually pop up on our sensors. Okay, now what to go and research? Let's see. Well, that doesn't need new labs being assigned to it, because it's not going to be getting any. I guess let's just go ahead and continue getting work done on the 70 centimeter cannonades. And that is actually full up on labs. Okay. So I need to wait for a lab to finish so that the game can complain to me about me having an idle lab. There we go. Oh, and it coincidentally coincided with finishing research on Compact ECM2. Do I want to go ahead and get research on Smallcraft ECM1? Not really. Like I said, I don't think it's super useful. Let's go ahead and do that, and... Do I want to go with better beam fire control for future reference? It's not super useful. So we would benefit significantly more when it comes to beam fire control, I think, if I was using like lasers and other things, which we're not doing for this playthrough. I will more than likely end up doing a future Aurora series, and I may choose to, have our naval doctrine there rather than being modern naval doctrine where you rely on missiles and fighters and things like that, to instead being, you know, big gun battleship type naval doctrine. In which case, we will probably use lasers because those will give us long range. Although I don't think they're necessarily the best option when it comes to actually doing damage per se. But it would allow us to have the range. We would just need to have the speed to be able to close the distance and maintain a reasonable distance from the enemy where they would not be able to engage us back. And in that case, in particular, we would actually use turrets. I would actually design turrets. We're not doing that for this series because, again, it's not relevant. You can't design turrets that use railguns. You can do it with Gauss cannons, but Gauss cannons are basically used for point defense generally. They do not quite have the range to be particularly useful for anything other than that. And so, for us, beam fire control is not a super useful tech anymore. Again, our 15 centimeter railguns have 210. And our current beam fire control has 240. So unless I can get like railgun launch velocity of 80,000, which I don't think is in here. No, it is. It's just expensive at 120,000 research points. And I don't care to research it. Right now, at least. Maybe later. But right now, it's not exactly something I care about. So I think what we're going to do with this extra lab is I'm just going to set it to do colonization cost reduction, and then I'm going to tell the game to assign any new labs that get finished to that. And I guess maybe next part we will be able to test out our active sensors, maybe. Maybe. Against the raiders, because maybe they'll pop up tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but next part. Because, yeah, surprisingly, this part was quiet. I'm frankly shocked. I really am. Somebody was mining an asteroid in City, and they've exhausted one of the resources there. This is probably like the only resource that was there, because that's generally how it goes. Lots of people basically being pushed into retirement as a result of poor health, or at least relinquishing their command of stuff as a result of poor health. Because we've had quite a few this part, which is a little unusual. Yeah, just had 2 that time now. With issues with commander health. How is our freighter that's going to Lalande doing? Or has... Oh no, they haven't even left yet. They got another 100 days. Well, a little less than 100 days now, but whatever. Somebody got promoted to captain to take over a command. A bunch of people going into retirement in their mid-40s. But then again, I think those were Army guys, so I guess it makes sense. Navy, you can stand to stick around for a bit longer. Somebody died of natural causes as well. That's always great. Alpha Centauri continues to not be able to make up its mind as to what the terrain is there, at least what the dominant terrain is. And there's my timer going off. Let's go ahead and I'm going to just assign you to this. And that means now it no longer has any openings for new labs to get assigned to it, so we will have to wait again 3 more years until that finishes. That's going to be a little while. Did Lalande ever finally get its deep space tracking? It did. Wonderful. God, that took so long. When it comes to the colonies, I'm fine with them having just the one deep space tracking. But Earth is always going to have 5. That's the plan. Now, Lalande, what is your mining looking like? It is going well. Alpha Centauri does have a worker shortage, at least a small one, but it'll survive. Saiseti B1 continues to have significant issues when it comes to the whole having enough people for mining thing, which of course is hampering its, well, mining. Because we could be mining a ton more Mercasium and Corundium if we had more people there. Colonization fleet, where are you? There you are. You are the Block 3s, which are the latest that we have. We haven't actually designed any new civilian ships because tech hasn't advanced to the point to require it. Sure, I can give you some new armor. If I give you some new armor, what does that free up? That frees up, we will say, about 300 tons. What does that allow in terms of being able to slap some extra colonies on here? Where are they? There they are. Let's see. So that is 2,500. So no. It's because of the crew costs, I can't quite do that unless I take off your fuel. And, well, you don't need, 2 years worth of fuel, I guess. So we can do that. That's a little bit overkill. There you go. One very large fuel tank is more than sufficient for your actual needs. And then I guess I'll just go and give you some extra maintenance to fill out the rest of this. That is absolute overkill in terms of actual maintenance needs, but that's the best we got. That's the best we got. You know what? I'm going to go and give you an extra cargo bay. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you an extra cargo bay. And also, we're going to switch to just a single large fuel tank. 2 large fuel tanks. There we go. That I think is a bit more accurate. But I would love to get the cargo shuttle bay, or, the load times down a little bit more. Because I believe that is 2 hours. Well, 2 hours, 56 minutes, I believe. I believe this is days, hours, minutes here. I do not believe that it is hours, minutes, seconds, but I could be wrong. But I believe it is days, hours, minutes. I'm pretty sure. So let's see, that technically puts you a little over. Well, I guess I can just remove the cargo. You don't really need all of that, technically speaking. That allows an extra 1,000. There we go. Bit of a minor refit for the colony ships. Allows a little bit extra. They will have about half the load time. They have significantly less fuel, but they don't need nearly the amount of fuel that they currently have. It is overkill, for being completely honest. So let's go and find the colony ship. Tell you to retool. You will finish that in a couple of days. I'll go ahead and let those couple of days go by, so that I can tell the colony ships to at least start the refits. Wonderful. Oops, not scrap, refit. From the block 3 to the block 4, you will finish those in September. Screw it, that's not going to take very long. Let's go ahead and let those do it as well. And then I'm going to tell you guys to just keep going back and forth between Seti and Earth and just loading and unloading. Colonists, specifically. That is specifically what you're going to be loading and unloading. How is our maintenance stuff doing exactly? Shipping tonnage maintained, 300 and we'll just say 380,000 tons. Maintenance facilities capacity, however, of 750,000. So I think we're fine there. Still. What else to research? Because I guess we'll just go for this then, because I got nothing better to really research. And assign any new labs that get built automatically to that. Oh, wonderful. We just got the power plant. Or, well, the part of the power plant that was holding us back, specifically. I think that didn't actually design the tech, though. Because, or, yeah, that didn't actually design in here the power plant, annoyingly. That is kind of annoying that it doesn't work like that, apparently. But I suppose that's good to know for future reference that future project tech does not work like that. This does not show up automatically in the research once it becomes an actual option. And it doesn't, there's no like drop down or something for you to pull it up. So I need to literally redesign it. That looks to be correct. So I will remember that for the future, that there is absolutely 0 point to designing something with the show next tech option checkmarked, because you can't actually automatically have it show up in your research queue. And here it does not automatically just turn into a normal prototype. It is still technically a future design prototype. Personally, I think that is stupid. I'm going to be completely honest. I think that that is a terrible system. So now I need to also design a new 63, which this looks to be correct. Of course, I don't know why I'm choosing prototype in this case, but that's just what I'm doing. And I'm going to obsolete that component. Obsolete that component. And now scroll to here, grab you. Dude who doesn't take as many labs gets to get the quicker one, and then the one that's going to require more time goes to the guy who can work more labs. Those will finish in October. We're not going to bother going ahead and letting the part run long enough to research those. That is perfectly fine. We're going to finish up on the colony ships, however. Those should be finishing on the 12th, if I recall correctly, right? Yep, that is correct. And you guys are going to go to Earth. Load colonists, go to Siceti. Make sure I'm sending to the right place. It is B1 correct that I want to go to. That is, in fact, correct. You're going to unload there, fly back here, refuel, resupply, and just keep cycling that until I say stop, basically, which means I need to remember to periodically be checking on how Siceti B1 is doing in terms of population, because you will just send people there forever. But I think this is a good stopping off point. Next time, we will complete the refits, because the actual cruisers, well, I said the actual cruisers, the cruisers and the normal destroyers, the ones that don't have the fancy schmancy missiles, will be able to actually do their refits finally. Next part. Still need to research the power plants, but, you know, those are supposed to be done in October, so it's fine. We'll live. So probably in January is when I will do it. Also, I now actually bothered to check and make sure that I've been keeping this thing up to date correctly. But we should, in theory, be having an election at the end of this year. So we're going to go ahead and do that as well. Next part. And you know what? I'm really legitimately considering flying out to Pi Libre and conquering Pi Libre 1. Now the question is going to be exactly how we go about conquering Pi Libre 1, because I don't know the range of their STO. And unless I'm misremembering, our troop transports don't have armor. No, they have armor rating of 1. They have the generic, this is the bare minimum amount of armor you can actually equip on your stuff. So these guys are completely incapable of taking any serious damage. They will pop if something so much as just looks at them, basically. So they are nowhere near fast enough to be able to fly to Pi Libre without getting shot, unload their troops, and then get the hell out of Dodge before the enemy can react. So I will have to fire on the enemies to try to neutralize, basically, their STOs. But I don't think I can get within gun range. I don't know, again, I don't know the range of their stuff. We're going to have to test that. But if I don't outrange them, we can't really do that unless I just fire a ton of missiles. But firing missiles is going to kick up a ton of radiation with the sheer number of missiles that we'd be firing. And if we're being completely honest, it's kind of a waste of a missile. It really is. The build time to build more missiles, I think, just makes it to not be a particularly preferred option when it comes to invading Pi Libre. Now, we're probably not going to invade them next part. Maybe the part after. We'll see. But I am seriously considering it. Because they're not doing anything. I mean, we haven't kept an eye on the other NPR that we found in, what was it, FL Virginis, right? Or was it GL? Which one was it? It was GL Virginis. You know, we've not kept an eye on how these guys are doing, but I'm assuming that they're actually doing something because, you know, they actually had ships at least, which is a major step up over Pi Libre, who seems to be dealing with a ton of raiders instead. And they're doing a good enough job, you know. They've literally dealt with 2 invasion forces, at least, based off all these wrecks. So we will figure out how to go about an invasion of Pi Libre, but it is a serious consideration to finally go ahead and actually take the fight to at least some sort of AI. You know, because we can't take the fight to the raiders. They don't have a planet that we can invade. They're just that. They're raiders. Sure, we found them in 55 Bootis, but that doesn't mean anything in the case of the raiders. They literally poof into existence wherever the game decides to have them poof into existence. Not the case when it comes to an actual NPR. So, yeah. But, like I said, that'll be it for this part. We will consider exactly how to go about doing that next time. But, so I will see you all next time. Quick reminder, if you want to stay up to date with the channel, any changes that might interfere with my recording schedule or streaming schedule, which should have restarted again by the time this video goes up. If it hasn't, something is seriously wrong. But yeah, so I would highly recommend you join the Discord server. That is my go-to place for posting about the channel. If I'm going to be posting about not being able to record for a week or whatever the case may be for some reason or another, that is the place where I'd be posting it. But I will see you all next time. Until then, goodbye and farewell.